speakers, and then we stop the recording, and then we go right into the Q&A.
Yep, we're in a recording session. All good to go.
Thank you. So some quick stats. We are in our 23rd session. We've had 26 guest speakers, so most of you may already know this. Moving forward, we are going to have 2 guest speakers. One is for our first part of our session, and then we go into our second part, which I'm calling it the after session, like the after party to the session. So we will continue having more guest speakers. We've had 25 past members. People are landing on jobs. Just this week, I was informed by 2 members who recently landed on jobs. And we are growing at a very fast rate. We are at 750 some odd members as of a few minutes ago, and still counting. And we are only about 5 months old, so we're growing pretty fast for 750 members in 5 months. So let me take a pause, let me drink some water before I introduce you to our next guest speaker. All right, so I want to introduce you to Curtis. Curtis and I have been friends for over 7 years. Curtis used to be my boss, and he was a CIO while I was IT operations manager at a previous company. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring Curtis onto our call was he's hands down the most, one of the most humble people I've met. He's accomplished a lot in his life. He started up 2 companies from scratch and sold them. He's very highly connected in the Charlotte area, and yet he's very easy to talk to and connect with. I remember there have been times when I would go into his office and we would have a very frictional talk, and then there were times when we just laughed and laughed so much that I could not breathe. So that's the type of leadership that is very attractive to me. But nevertheless, Curtis has a lot of experience with hiring the right people, especially because he started 2 companies by himself. So what better person who can give some guidance and tips and tricks on what we can do better for our careers, for our job search, etc. So without further ado, Curtis, if you don't mind doing a short introduction of yourself, and then going right into our one question that we ask all our guest speakers, which is, can you please share one piece of insider knowledge that many job seekers might not be aware of, but would find incredibly helpful in their job search?
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that introduction. Very humbling and very gracious, and appreciate that very much. Yeah, my name is Curtis Hughes, as Danny said. I've been in technology about 25 years now, and started my career writing and building software. I was a developer when I came out with a computer science degree. About 5 years out of college, I started my first company, and then, as Danny had mentioned, I kind of sold that, merged with another company, and grew that one, and exited there and became CIO at a company in Charlotte, where I met Danny and hired Danny some 7 years ago. So recently left my role as CIO back in October, and so for the last 5 months I was in transition as well. Took the fourth quarter kind of pretty slow, took it off, and then really started back looking for my next right role. And I knew I wanted to take my time and make sure that it was the right role and not just a role. So yeah, recently landed somewhere, been in the role, just finished week 4. So I'm happy to talk through that. I'll share a little bit about that today. But Danny said I could only talk about one item. I'm going to share 2, and there's a lot of ways I could have come at this. I was thinking about what I wanted to share, and he put in all caps there something that people might not be aware of, and I don't know, you guys have had so many speakers and been on here for so long. And there's a lot of information and knowledge out there on finding your next role, your next job, right? I don't know that I would call all of it wisdom. There's a lot of stuff you have to weed through sometimes, but there's a lot of information. You guys heard some awesome stuff from AHF, and I just wanted to share these two things because I think they might help with the job search process. I'm happy to, like Danny said, reach out, connect. I'll share. I think Danny's even put it in there, my LinkedIn, but I'll share information in the chat as well. But happy to connect, and if you want to know more about interviewing and other things that I don't talk about here, I'm always happy to help this group for sure. So I think the first thing that I'll mention is, and I don't know, Lewis, if your role came this way, and not all of them will, but I knew mine probably would, that my next role was going to be through my network, through connections and things like that. I just think today it's crazy. You've all been through the process, and getting your resume into a stack and trying to figure out how to stand out, it's just hard, especially when there's hundreds or even thousands of applicants to some of these things. So I think it will come through your network, at least probably 75+% of the roles. But it might not be how you think. And I want to share something, and maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. There was a sociologist back in the 70s, Mark Granovetter, and I'll post links to kind of his study and stuff, and it'll make sense here in a minute. But he came up with this theory and essentially wrote a paper back in like 72, 73, called The Strength of Weak Ties. And he essentially had this theory that weak ties, those casual acquaintances, loose connections, not people that you talk to, the circles you run in every day, but these weak ties, he called them, exposed us to new networks, new information, new opportunities that we wouldn't have even through our strong connections. So we often think about our first degree connections, reach out to that person I know, but his theory was that most of your new information and your connections or opportunities are going to come through these looser connections. And as you start to think about it and peel back the layers, it's really true. I mean, you think about how many, especially as you get older, how many close friends you have. Probably could count them on one hand, because strong ties, those really, really good relationships that you nurture, they take a lot of effort. You have to spend time, you nurture. Acquaintances, they don't take as much effort. So we tend to have more of those than we do these really strong, close friends. And it's interesting because when you have weak ties, people that maybe your friends know, they have strong networks and strong friends that then expose you to different networks. Toward the end, maybe if I have time, I'll show an image to kind of show how all this does. I'm a visual person. If not, I'll post it in the chat. But it's really interesting to talk about the weak ties and what that means. And I'll post the studies in the chat after this as well. But I would encourage you to, rather than thinking about your job through a first degree connection, you probably already exhausted some of those. It may come through a second degree, third degree, or even further beyond that. So there was a study, I mentioned this, from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and LinkedIn. I think they all got together in 22 or 23 around the 50-year anniversary of this, and they studied 20 million people on LinkedIn over a 5-year period. Those 20 million people created billions of different connections, and they wanted to test this theory essentially, and they found that it was true, and that most of the people that found jobs and connections and things like that weren't their first degree connections. It was a second or third degree. And so what they found was that they're moderately weak ties. So it's not always weaker is better. Find a 10th degree connection, but essentially a second or third degree connection with at least more than one, 5 or more would be better, mutual connections between them. So not just one person that might know one other person. Somebody that's maybe a second or third degree, but you know them through other people. That's really the way to go. And LinkedIn's been doing a lot of work on this. You may have seen it on your feed or over on the side. It says the people you may know, and you'll see some of those, and maybe it's people you don't know personally, or maybe it's a second or third degree connection. I would encourage you to kind of tap into that, because that's kind of where some of this came from. So focus on weak ties, and I'll tie it into a story and something else here as my second piece real quick as I wrap up. So I don't know how many of you, you can raise your hand if you're on camera or stick your hand up if not. How many of you seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? It came out a long time ago, 2008 or something like that. It was actually based on a memoir written by a guy named Danny Wallace, based on a year of the author's life. I don't know if you knew that. Regardless of what you think about Jim Carrey, he's got some funny stuff, but maybe some not so funny stuff. Stick with me. It's not a bad movie, but the message is what I really like. And I started to think about this more, and especially through this transition period over the last 5 months. The movie's really about saying yes to new opportunities, to new challenges, to new experiences. If you've watched the movie, if not, go out there, it's probably on streaming, watch the movie. He basically is a guy that just turns down everything, and then all of a sudden, goes to this seminar, this guy drags him there, and he has to say yes to everything, no matter what it is. Anything that comes up, you want to go out and go to this thing, he has to say yes. And it opens a ton of doors for him. And I think it does the same thing here as well. It pushes you out of your comfort zone. It forces you to grow. And I think it's how we learn, evolve, find new opportunities. Because I really believe, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn maybe about a month ago, and I'll post the link to my post in the comments as well. But I really believe that growth, whether it's personal, professional, new job, opportunity, whatever it is, I really believe it lives on the other side of fear and discomfort, not in its absence. I think if we shy away from going toward those things, stay in our comfort zone, I think, we really have to question if our next step, if we're focused on comfort, if our next step is really moving us forward. And that was the case for me. And I'll give you the example to kind of wrap up here. So my current role that I just started about 4 weeks ago was through a weak tie. And so I had a strong tie, and I wouldn't even say it was a super strong tie because I hadn't talked to this guy, known him, we talked a couple times, but wasn't a best buddy that I hang out with all the time. Hadn't talked to him in many, many months, maybe even a year. And through my transition, I reached out. You cast a wide net, you reach out to a lot of people. And I did that, and he reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm putting together kind of a CIO executive dinner. Do you want to come to this dinner?" I was like, sure, dinner things and then family time. But I was like, "Yeah, let's go. It's good. I want to get out and meet some people." And there were a bunch of people he told me, and I was like, "I don't know these folks." So it was a lot of people I didn't know. Well, one of the people that I met there and sat beside was a partner at the company that I'm at now. And so had I not said yes to that dinner and reached out and done that, I would have never met this person. And it was great. I was like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And we kind of went our separate ways. It was a couple months before I even talked to her again. And I actually reached out to her because I saw that she sat on the board of an organization that I wanted to get involved with and start going to some of their meetings. So it wasn't even about a job. It was just, "Hey, I'd like to pick your brain about this organization. You sit on the board. Can you tell me more about it?" And then one thing led to another. And through that conversation, she even posted about this week. Through that conversation, she said, "Hey, what if you were working for us and kind of, with us?" And so that's kind of how one thing led to another. But had I not said yes to those opportunities, I would have never met her. So now she's a strong tie, and that meeting that I ultimately went to, she was the only person I knew there. So this was a totally new group. Outside of anything I'd ever gone to. It was investment bankers and mergers and acquisitions, not your typical tech group that I would normally go to. I knew one person out of 85 people in that room, and it forced me to forge new connections. And so through her, again, strong tie, a bunch of new weak ties that I could now start to forge relationships with and have access to a whole new group of people. So I'm happy to answer questions or however you want to do it, Danny, and I'll reach out and I'll post some of these links up there. But I would encourage you, get out of your comfort zone, think about weak ties, think about new experiences, getting involved with things that maybe you normally wouldn't get involved with, groups, anything like that. I really believe, and even if you don't find your next opportunity, you're going to grow, you're going to meet somebody, you're going to learn something new, and I think it pushes us all to be better.
Thanks, Curtis. So if you don't mind sticking around for the Q&A, and we go right into our Q&As. So if you don't mind stopping the recording, please.